you don't want to let it be, if you can't set yourself free, take your mind into another place and time. Free yourself up to find the universal mind. The universal mind. The universal mind.
Live from Hollywood, it's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Mark Summers, and now, here's your host, Dan Harary.
Dan Harary, that's me. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. I am Dan Harary, and we have a very special show today. We have the first couple of UFOlogy, Richard and Tracey Dolan. I'm not sure if they've been called the first couple of UFOlogy by anyone before me, but they certainly are. And I'm going to get to them in 1 second. I just want to remind everyone who's interested in the UFO, UAP, ET, AI, and all higher consciousness and all these things, check out Contact in the Desert. It's coming up May 30th through June 3rd, contactinthedesert.com. The tickets are going fast. We have over 70 speakers, including both of the Dolans and myself and everyone else you could think of. So get your tickets now while they're still available. Okay, I want to just jump right in today. We have two very special people on the show. Richard Dolan is one of the best-known UFO researchers and historians in the world, nothing serious, and the author of several groundbreaking books in the field, including his 2-volume history, UFOs and the National Security State, which altered our understanding of the history of UFOs and the ongoing government cover-up. His other books include AD After Disclosure, which opened up a new conversation on how UFO disclosure should take place. UFOs for the 21st Century Mind, which discusses the full range of the UFO subject in all of its complexities. And The Alien Agendas, one of the few attempts to analyze the beings behind the UFO phenomenon by examining the long history of human interactions with them. Tracey Garbutt Dolan is a close encounter researcher, a professionally trained remote viewer, which I have a lot of questions about, a podcaster, and a renowned lecturer on all things UFO. Her areas of interest focus on the mind and transpersonal consciousness as they relate to abductions, close encounter reports, controlled remote viewing, precognition, lucid dreaming, out-of-body experiences, and other anomalous, I always mess that word up, anomalous experiences. Okay, so Race, let's bring in Richard and Tracey and say hello. There they are. Hello there.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Dan. So great to meet you finally.
I know, really. It really is. Tracey and I have had like this love affair on text for about a year now. What much behind Richard's back? Don't tell Richard.
Wait, we're signing him up for all sorts of things in the background.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we've been conspiring. Great to meet you, Tracey. Nice to see you, Richard. I saw you at Contact last year. Certainly this year at Contact, we'll all be all over each other, all over the place. And also, both of you were kind enough to join my Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, which I launched last year with Steve Bassett, as you know. And we gave birth to HDA at Contact last year. I had just met Steven a few weeks before Contact for the first time. We had one lunch together. We came up with this fakakta idea, which I just pulled out of the sky. And then we went to Contact and we were inviting everyone to join Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. And everyone said yes, starting with George Norrie and Nick Pope. And then I'm like thinking, okay, we have members, we have a name. We don't have a logo. We don't have a website. We don't have a company. It's not real. It's just an idea. It's 3 words. And we cut and paste. Today we have almost 200 members. and Shirley MacLaine and Dee Wallace and Thomas Jane. We have movie stars. We have you, of course, and Nick Pope and Steve Bassett and lots of Whitley Strieber, Linda Moulton House, George Norrie. So it's very, very interesting how HDA came about. But you guys were founding members, and thank you very much for that.
Very glad to be part of it, Dan.
Absolutely.
That's great. So, tonight, because I've never interviewed two people at once, I would kind of like to go back and forth a little bit. Richard Tracey, and Richard, you're the guru of ufology history. So instead of going highbrow, I want to go way, way lowbrow with you. And my 90-year-old mother watches the show every week, and every week, what were they talking about with this Roswell? What is this Roswell that they keep talking? So tonight's show I want to dedicate to my mother, Richard, and I want to ask you some ufology 101.
Yes.
Basic. Well, instead of this end, we're going to go this end and explain to my mother a few things. And the first question I have for you is, and then Race, if we could put up image number 1, please, slide number 1. Okay, so Richard, starting with, I want to do ufology's greatest hits during the last 80 years. So this is the Battle of Los Angeles. Can you tell us in shorthand what this was all about?
Yes, it's a fascinating moment in American and world history, actually. Think 3 months after Pearl Harbor. So this is at the end of February in 1942. America is now at war, although there hasn't been a whole lot of too much fighting on the American side just yet, but that would start. But off the coast of California, late at night in February 24th of 1942, radar detected objects coming in from the Pacific Ocean. Now, at midnight, really late at night, there were Japanese submarines out there. People were wondering, is this a Japanese attack? Well, it's a really weird thing, because what ended up happening is that about up to 15 or so objects were seen for a fairly extended period of time that night, going into like 2, 3 in the morning, that were shot at. Those dots around the searchlights,
right?
Those are exploding artillery shells,
right?
And the object in the center is whatever. This is an actual photograph. I mean, it looks like a 1930s mock-up, but this is a real picture, and they are zoning in on an object. If you look carefully at it, it looks like a disc-shaped object, doesn't it?
It sure does.
And
Richard, I believe this was the front page of the LA Times the next day.
That's right. It absolutely was. And so the U.S. Army fired over 1,400 artillery rounds at this thing, at actually that and a bunch of other things that were with it. None of them seem to have gone down. This is a real mystery. You had some people saying, well, it was just a bunch of jittery, war nervy kinds of nervous people, and they shot at some meteorological balloons to see which way the wind was blowing. If they were shooting at balloons, those things would have been shot out of the sky. Whatever this was, and we have a lot of witnesses, including military guys, saying, I looked up and this was a metallic object. I saw artillery rounds hitting it. Nothing happened. And so it's a genuine mystery. We don't have a good explanation for it to this day. There's a lot more I could say, but I don't want to keep going on and on. It's a heck of a case, though.
Right. Did you ever hear or read that perhaps it was shot down and they retrieved something off the coast of Long Beach or San Pedro in the ocean?
There are rumors. There were some alleged leaked documents. They are very controversial.
Okay.
Sometimes called the majestic documents, in which this is discussed as a genuine non-human event. But as far as recovery, I'm not sure that. I mean, there was all kinds of debris that was on the beach that morning. That a lot of kids combed over the beach to pick up shrapnel, artillery, things that had come out of the sky. But I'm personally not aware of the craft actually being recovered.
Okay. And also, what's interesting, this is 1942. Everyone knows Roswell. Roswell was 5.5 years later.
That's right.
So makes
5 years early.
Yeah.
And the Navy, took the control over this, and they said to the public, it was just a big mistake, just war nerves. 6 people died as a result of that evening. Several of heart attacks attributed to the shelling, but a couple actually, there was debris that fell, and a couple of people were killed.
Right. It's remarkable. I love that one. Having lived in Los Angeles for so many years. Okay, Race, slide number 2, please. And Richard, these are Foo Fighters, World War II. Please tell us what were the, not the Dave Grohl Foo Fighters. What were the real Foo Fighters?
Well, this is all before the world learned about flying saucers, so no one was talking like that. But you know, World War II is a very, very big thing. A lot can get lost in something as big as World War II. But there were these definite many cases of these weird lights or objects, who knows what they were, that accompanied fighter and bomber aircraft on their missions. Now, we first learned about it from the Allied side of it, the American and the British side of it. There were always statements that the Germans and the Japanese experienced this as well. We have heard this. What can definitely be said is that these weird things were seen over Europe and over the Pacific. That's very important because that, you know, because there's some people who say, well, these were experimental German technology. But what happened is these objects would come in toward the aircraft, get close enough, and seem to pace the aircraft. And then often the aircraft would experience almost engine failure, would start sputtering out. And then these objects would sometimes zip away and things would return to normal. So you could wonder if that was some kind of German tech. But the problem is they were over the Pacific Ocean as well. And it's just not credible that this was German. They're doing it over Europe and over the Pacific, where the Japanese are fighting the Americans. These Foo Fighters, as they were called, were seen a lot. They were investigated by American intelligence, by British intelligence. To anyone's knowledge, there is still no final conclusion as to what they were. So we're talking, you know, 80 years now, and we still don't have an answer to these things. They acted and seemed a lot like what we would call UFOs today.
Weren't they primarily orange orbs?
Many of them were yellow or orange orbs. That's right, spheres. And by the way, that version of the phenomenon, these orange or yellow spheres, that continues to this day. That's a major subset of UFO sightings, are these silent, seemingly intelligent spheres. Are they spheres of light, or are they just glowing enough that they look like they're light? But that's definitely something that continues to this day.
Right. And the Nazi Luftwaffe pilots thought they were American secret weapon, and Americans thought they were a Nazi secret weapon.
That's right.
It's a great mystery. And I love that one.
As well as the Japanese.
See, that I didn't know. I didn't realize Foo Fighters were happening over the Pacific. My uncle, my uncle fought in the Pacific Theater. My mother's oldest brother. He was a gunner over wherever, I think Manila. And boy, I wish he was still alive. I would love to ask him.
There'd be a lot to talk about. Yeah, but this phenomenon did occur over the Pacific. And I don't want to take too much time here, but one great American researcher, Leonard Stringfield, this is, I think, even after the Japanese surrender, but there were a lot of American troops. He was flying from Okinawa to Japan, and they encountered one of these objects, and they nearly had to bail out of their aircraft because they were sputtering so bad. And then it was a teardrop shape, bright white, like burning magnesium, and it then just zipped off and they were okay.
Wow, that's great. Another great one. Okay, Race, number 3, please. All right, Richard, who is this gentleman?
This is Kenneth Arnold. This is the man, because of him, we have the phrase flying saucers. And he's holding an image, by the way, of what he believes the objects that he saw looked like. So Kenneth Arnold, this is now 1947, so it's after the war has ended. He was a private pilot in the state of Idaho, lieutenant governor of Idaho. He was a very successful businessman. People respected him. But in 1947, he was in his 30s, and there was a reward for a downed U.S. aircraft in the state of Washington in the Cascade Mountains. And so he wanted to get his $5,000 reward. So he flew his private plane in the area, and he's looking around, and he didn't see the downed aircraft, but he did see about a dozen or so gleaming objects going very fast across the sky. And Arnold was a very intelligent man, and he was able to track their speed by measuring the distance between one mountain peak to another mountain peak, which he knew the distance there.
Right.
And so he was able to kind of see how fast they were going. And he made 2 calculations, but even the conservative one had them going at well over 1,000 miles per hour, which was well beyond any of the top aircraft speed of the day. And so he landed at an airport, talked about this. The press got, it was just like catching lightning in a bottle. You could have come down, talked about it, and no one would have been paying attention, but there was press there. They grabbed the story and ran with it. He said they moved as if they were saucers skipping on the water.
Right.
And that led to the phrase flying saucers.
That's right. And I believe he was over Mount Rainier.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right.
In
June of 1947.
Right. In July of 2008, I spent a 3-day weekend at the ECETI Ranch, James Gilliland's ranch, which is as you know, Richard, at the base of Mount Adams.
That's correct.
I had a profound UFO experience there that partially altered the course of my life. A craft came, beautiful emerald green light came under the craft, 250 people, beamed down this beautiful, intense emerald green light over all of us, like silent. It was like Morse code. And I'm looking up, I'm crying. I mean, it blocked out the sky. I don't know how big it was, but it blocked out the sky.
Because it was quite remarkable.
And this beautiful emerald green. And I got, in my heart, I still feel it. Hello, we're here. We love you. Be kind to one another. Be good to planet Earth. Don't be afraid. We were in the neighborhood. We wanted to say hello. And then the light turned off. It just slowly went away. And then bang, zoom, and it went over Mount Adams. So Mount Adams is the cousin to Mount Rainier.
Yeah, that's right.
Where Kenneth Arnold. So I just wanted to throw that.
Thanks for that story.
Wow.
That's quite interesting. There's a lot of activity out in that whole region. I think always has been. A long time.
Yeah. And the last thing is James Gilliland's property used to be owned by Native American Indians. And when I was there that weekend in 2008, someone said, the Indians used to call Mount Adams the mountain of shining lights, because shining lights used to come. Wow. This is hundreds of years ago. Lights used to come in and out of the mountain. So yeah, Richard, there's something going on in that mountain range, man. Right? Okay, my little blonde friend Tracey. Here we go. You're up. All right. I don't know the first thing about remote viewing. I think it's fascinating. I'd never studied it. I haven't read about it yet, but I know you are a guru in that area. And Race, do we have slide 4?
In the 70s.
There it is.
There they are.
Right.
And essentially, they developed all of the protocols that we now know that were used in the military for psychic spying that they learned the Soviet Union at the time was using on the US. And they wanted to determine if ESP, these extrasensory perceptions, were something that we could do at will. And so this is what all of the experiments were, developing all of the protocols to try to engage one's psychic abilities at will. So that's basically what it is. Psychic spying, sometimes it's called. It's basically like your own intuition, but the protocols are like a set of instructions over top of your intuition. So it's really just another psychic modality. And it's just, in my opinion, something that we can use to sort of further exercise that muscle. They developed it, and it was used by the military. But as far as what's really important about it for us is that we can learn that it's something that we can do instead of just having spontaneous psychic breakthroughs. We can actually target something and glean psychic or extrasensory perceptions about it. So remote viewing is just getting perceptions, psychic perceptions about a target that's hidden from you. That's all it is. So just to boil it down.
Yeah, like seeing things that are supposed to be impossible to see, but you do it anyway.
Right. Exactly. So it's this big mysterious thing to a lot of people, but it's really not. It's something that I think is very natural for people. It's just a matter of learning how you respond to the different protocols to bring it out of yourself. So it's something that can be taught. Some people are probably a little bit better at it than other people, but a lot of people, there is a first time effect that is known in the lab, and a lot of people are able to show themselves that they can do this. So for me personally, this is all about us learning what we can do, that we kind of negate in ourselves. We're pushed away from this. It's not really acknowledged in the general public. And so this is why, for me, I think it's really important to let people know, trying things like this is worthwhile, so we can see what we are able to do. So
do you think all humans have the potential to tap into this?
oh yeah, I absolutely do. I honestly think it's just as natural as the patterns of monarch butterflies and whales. And I think when we were hunters and gatherers, this was something that we were using all along. I think that we've just kind of become lazy. For one, we just don't need this ability anymore, right? I think that's really mostly it. We just don't exercise it. We don't use it. It's not acknowledged, and it's not valued in today's society, right? It's also stigmatized. So why would we put any pressure there and try to do it? But I think it just takes the tiniest amount of attention. It's really an attention management system. You're sort of, depriving certain senses and allowing other senses to come through. So, but I just think it's natural. There's nothing magic about it, honestly.
And how did you become a professionally trained remote viewer, you personally?
I kind of bumped into it. I had a lot of, like a lot of people probably watching this, had a lot of unusual things happening in my life. And I was going to different schools of mind that were experiential to try to see, what can we do? What I don't believe our minds are designed this way by accident. So I wanted to really experience and push the boundaries of what my mind and our minds could do. And I bumped into this at a school and did a future remote view and got a hit. It was,
Wow.
yeah, it surprised me like it would surprise anybody else. So you could do a remote view of something right now in real time. A future remote view is you do the remote view, but they don't even choose the person who chooses the target until a week later.
That's crazy. So you don't know what the target is even going to be.
Yeah. So it would be like, today I'm going to do a remote view, but you will pick someone that I don't even know, and they will pick the target in 7 days. But I'm going to do the remote view today.
And that works. That works.
And it works. So this is the remarkable thing about remote viewing is it teaches us about ourselves. It teaches us that time is not what we think it is. This illusion of this individuality is, it's something we base our lives on, but it's kind of, it brings in the question of all of this. We are so much more than what we think we are and what we're told we are. And remote viewing kind of lets us know this for ourselves. We can prove it to ourselves by engaging in this discipline and trying it. Many other disciplines too, but this one's really good because it's because of the protocols, because it was developed in a lab, and we can kind of track it, track our progress and have other people choose targets. That's why it's called actually controlled remote viewing. We're controlling how we do it. So yeah, it's fascinating.
I don't want to jump in too many times on Tracey, but I just have to say, so we're friends with Russell Targ and with Hal Puthoff. Russ particularly has talked to us a lot about, he continues to work. He's 90 and he's still going.
Wow.
The thing is,
I should set him up. Is he single? I'll set him up with my mother.
He's got a very
serious.
good situation there. Yeah. I think
My mother's in a wheelchair, but she's still very active.
So check it out. So Russell, this stuff that Tracey's talking about, this future remote viewing, this stuff is real. Like, it seems absolutely bonkers. Like, how could this be possible? I am telling you, that stuff is real. What does it say about time? What does it say about causality? Well, that's a whole other series of questions. But
right.
it is fascinating, and to hear Tracey talk about it, or Russ, or some of these experienced remote viewers, it's amazing. That's all I'll say.
So to answer your question, I bumped into it by accident. And then when I saw what it could teach us about ourselves, I decided to engage it more deeply and get trained up. And I've never regretted it. I think it's a great discipline.
We have to take a break soon, but quick question. And this is a 5-hour debate, but quick question. Do you feel that extraterrestrials, because I strongly believe this, extraterrestrials helped to craft mankind? I don't think they created mankind. I believe Eric von Daniken's theory. They came, they saw our great ancestors, with sticks and twigs and Neanderthal men, and they say, hey, those are strong guys, but they're not that bright. And they just get a couple of injections, like I used to get allergy shots, and then we became human beings. And if that is the case, perhaps part of our ET DNA is what enables us to do extraordinary things. Do you think that might be the case?
I've spent the last 5 years or so trying to explore that issue on my own. Do we want to do this before the break or after?
All right, let's go. You guys think about that one, and I will too. And Race, let's rock and roll with a little break here.
While most near-death experiencers return to this plane of existence with alluring tales of their time spent in the presence of the divine, what happens when one crosses the veil into the afterlife, into the void? In the new book, Dying to Meet Them, Mindy Toutfest describes her journey to the afterlife after a devastating aneurysm, how a strange turn of events would lead her to spiritual growth, divine healing, UFO experiences, and a greater understanding of the universe. Get your copy of Dying to Meet Them today at Amazon.com or visit unxmedia.com for more information on this book and more amazing selections from UnX Media Publishing at unxmedia.com.
And welcome back to part 2 of Paranormal Tonight. I'm Dan Harary. Let's bring back the first couple of UFOlogy. Did I coin that, you guys? Or
We were wondering about this.
Sure.
Please
it's
give me.
possible.
I want the credit. I want the credit for that one.
Okay.
Love it.
Probably God knows who it really was. So right before the break, I was asking you if there's ET DNA in humans, which I'm pretty sure there is, because I know I've done a lot of paranormal things in my life. But perhaps that could explain why people could remote view and things. Richard, what do you think?
Well, I've actually about 5 years ago or so, because we've all heard about ancient aliens. I've been on ancient aliens a number of times, and I've often wondered, is there a huge hole in our ancient history? If so, can any of that be explained through intervention of any kind? So I really did take it seriously, and I'm a very serious student of all of human history, not just UFOs, and not just recorded history, but prehistory also. It's a very strong interest of mine. I will just say I am not yet sold on the idea that we were definitely manipulated, although I keep it open. When I wrote the Alien Agendas, I did float a theory that actually I no longer hold to, that there's a gene called the microcephalin gene that seemed to have possibly been tweaked around 40 to 60,000 years ago. This would have controlled brain development. It's an interesting idea. I don't really have a lot of faith in that concept any longer. I do think that human evolution is a very bizarre and fascinating process that has gone into high gear. And, the question is, why is that? And that's a valid question to ask. As far as DNA from elsewhere, I haven't yet seen evidence, although I would say this. If there was an alien species that observed us, say, 50 to 100,000 years ago, they could very well have seen potential in us, and they could very well have said, let's see if we can tweak these people here and there. I don't really know that I believe that any longer. I lean actually away from that as an explanation. And I think, more toward a naturalistic explanation of human evolution. Doesn't mean we haven't been observed for a long time. I think we have. And the last thing I would just say is, I was talking with Tracey about this. I don't really know, but I would like to think that if there's an intergalactic law against anything, I would like there to be an intergalactic law against tampering with an intelligent species that is developing, that's in an early stage of development. I just feel like I would almost consider that like a crime. I mean, developing an intelligent species on any world is a precious thing, and it can't be something that just happens all the time.
Right.
Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and I don't know that we've had an intelligent species that can engage in symbolic thinking and abstract thought until us. So it's rare, not impossible, but so when it happens, my attitude would be like, don't screw with it. Let this species develop as they need to. So I would like to think that we were not tampered with for that reason, if for no other.
In your Alien Agendas book, did you mention you probably did. I didn't read that one. I read the others. The University of Chicago study, they called it the Great Brain Event from 50,000 years ago, the Great Brain Event. Human brains exponentially became us. And it's right in your timeline that you just were mentioning.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how old that science is, actually. I mean, when you study the current situation in paleoanthropology today, I don't really hear people talking like that. There is definitely a development of the human Homo sapiens. Like, we lived at the same time as other human species. We lived at the same time as Neanderthals. We lived at the same time as a group called Denisovans. And we also coexisted with Homo erectus, much more primitive version. And then the so-called Hobbit people of Indonesia. We overlapped with a lot of other human species at the same time. But there was something, we developed bow and arrow technology maybe 70,000 years ago down in Southern Africa. There is something that happened. I would say a little more than 50,000 years ago. There's a lot that we don't know. There's still really, this is an exciting time to be studying that field. And when I started looking into it about 5 years ago, I could say I had no idea just how sophisticated, how fascinating it is. So I feel a little uneasy traipsing into their discipline, to be honest with you, and saying, oh, yes, I know exactly how it went down.
Richard, you remember the story, and I'm not sure if Dan knows this one, but the story of our friend, Linda Moulton Howe, how she was lured onto Kirkland Air Force Base under false pretenses and then sort of kind of locked in a room. And
With Richard Doty in 1983.
And they threw this manila folder on the desk that said Project Garnet on it, which essentially what she read and went through said that we were, several billion androids walking the earth because we had been manipulated. And, I remember doing that Phenomenon radio show with her about that. And the one thing that stood out in my mind back here, sitting in the background, like I am with you guys, we are the only creatures on this planet that are running away from our natural environment like our asses are on fire.
That's
so it makes sense that maybe something was tweaked somewhere along the way, and we're just that little teeny tiny bit different somehow.
I think that would explain a lot of things,
I just want to add as well that I think from the perspective of the mind and looking at all of the contact cases, I could see that we were tweaked, is my opinion, because they certainly have a way grander mastership over the mind than we do. And that could either be because they're super advanced, or it could be because we're made in their image, so just want to throw it out there. They seem to know our minds a lot more deeply than we do, the way they manipulate us and control us. So I want to throw that one out, that I could see that, that
I agree with you. I really do. I do. Richard, do Eric Von Daniken and Giorgio look at you like, Richard, come on, they made us. Come on, man, they made us.
Well, if they do, they would have a very long conversation with me.
I would love to see that on a stage, the three of you just going back and forth with that one.
Look, I've gone over, I've changed and evolved my own opinions on some of these matters over the years. And I would say I'm at the point now where I do think there has probably been a longstanding monitoring of our species. I think that, but I would put it at low level, and I would put it at basically like a hands-off type of a thing. And what's changed in the last, I would say, primarily 2 centuries is the quantity of sightings, and the kind of up close and personal nature of most of them. I think something changed once our species entered the world of, let's say, science, where we really, last 200 years, where we really figured out how to manipulate the world in a major way. Right. And I think the number of sightings reflects that change, and particularly since the Second World War, where it really went into high gear. In other words, we got the attention of the local community in the galaxy, and I think that's what's brought them in, because they know we're about to jump right into their world. That's what I think.
Very cool. Okay,
so I think we've been on the radar for a while.
Yeah.
But what could they do with us, and what could we do with them 500 years ago? I mean, honestly, you see a UFO.
Zechariah Sitchin said, they were digging gold for them.
Yeah, I have a lot of complaints and critiques of Sitchin, of Von Daniken, and of a lot of those theories. I think they were a nice try. That's what I guess I would say.
Very healthy. All right, we have 20 minutes. I want to power through some more stuff. All right. This is we could do, Tracey. We could do 5 parts, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Race, can we do number 5? Slide number 5. Okay, so Richard, what happened at Roswell? Shorthand version. Nothing serious. Shorthand version.
This is poor Jesse Marcel's moment where he was made to look like a fool. Unfortunately, right. Jesse Marcel was the intelligence officer at Roswell Army Airfield. These were the guys who still had they were the only unit in the world that had possession of atomic weapons. This is the same unit that 2 years earlier had dropped the bombs over Japan. Now they're in Roswell. Here they are. An object goes down 75 miles north of that airbase in the desert in the middle of nowhere. Jesse Marcel and 2 colleagues go out there to examine the terrain. And he collects a lot of things. He shows his family on the way back in his Jeep. Shows Jesse Jr., his 11-year-old son, who remembers it for the rest of his life. Goes back to his commanding officer, Colonel William Blanchard. They issue a press release saying, yep, the Army's got one of these flying discs. that everyone's been talking about. Holy smokes. And then within hours, news comes from DC that says, no, you're going to retract that. And they did. And then he flies to Fort Worth, Texas, where this picture is,
Right.
the 8th Army Air Force.
Roger
Ramey. And Jesse sits with Ramey, and they say to the press, no, it was a weather balloon. Sorry, we made a mistake. And Jesse Marcel's made to pose of that. So it was we know for a fact that whole material was switched. Ramey's number 2 was a colonel named Thomas Dubose, who later became a general. Dubose was interviewed by, I think, Stan Friedman, Kevin Randall, and some other Roswell researchers. And Dubose said in his retirement, we switched that. Like, he's on record. He said the whole thing. We switched it out. And he said because this was too important. And he wouldn't say what it was. He said, this is highest level of secrecy. And that had to be switched out.
I recently came up with an idea, Richard and Tracey. This would have changed American history, world history in the last 80 years. Okay. Roswell crash happens. They find the debris. Instead of that press release, and I'm a publicist, so I would have been the schmuck that did that press release and then had to pull it back. That would have been me if I was on that base. But instead of the press release, they call President Truman, get him on the phone. And he said, you have a craft? You have bodies? I'll be on the next plane. Don't do a thing. I'll be right there. Okay. Truman gets on a plane with his majestic 12 buddies, goes there, goes, holy S word. I can't believe it. This is real. And does a press conference from Roswell. Or it wasn't Roswell, it was Kuroda, and then they brought it to the base. And then does a press conference. People of the world, you're not going to believe me. I don't believe it myself. We have a UFO.
Maybe that almost happened. I think
wouldn't that have? Well, would have been disclosure on day one, Richard. Day one
could have. And we don't know what went through Harry Truman's mind when he was informed of this, or of all of the other, because it wasn't just Roswell. There were UFOs being seen everywhere. It was almost like an invasion. It's what people have to remember. Now, some of the sightings people reported may have just been overexcited nerves, possible. But there were a lot of good military sightings that were recorded. We know about this. So a lot of stuff was going on. And one of them comes down at Roswell. So if you're Truman, the question is, would you have an instinct to say to the world, yes, there's some phenomenon. We don't know what this is. But this is just after the Second World War. The whole world was lying flat on its back, basically, trying to get up. Right. And you got this new Cold War starting. There's a lot of stress and tension going on. And I guarantee you, Truman's people would have said, no. We need to get on top of this. And by the way, do you want the Russians to get this technology? We can't let them have this. So there would have been a tremendous amount of secrecy involved with this. And I think that's what happened. And the problem with a secret like that is, how do you stop it? Once you start the secret, under what conditions can you actually end it? It becomes very difficult.
Yeah, that's where we are now.
Yes, that's right.
Nobody will end it.
Yeah.
And I would love to do a movie. I would love to pitch a movie on Truman does a press conference on day one, and their disclosures happens on day one.
A nice alternate history movie there.
Alternate history, exactly. All right, race number 6. I'm Tracey. I will get to you again. Richard, did UFOs really fly over the White House, the Capitol, and the Pentagon?
They really did fly over Washington, D.C. Absolutely. That particular photograph, I'm glad you showed that, because there's been a lot of critique of that photograph. You see the lights over the Capitol.
I believe that's a fake. I think that's a fake photograph.
I think so too. Or it's not a fake, but I think it's just an optical effect based on the street lights below.
Oh, okay.
Many people pointed this out. However, for 2 weekends in a row, July 19th, 20th, and then July 26th, 27th, there was substantial UFO activity over the Capitol. This was tracked by multiple air traffic airports, air traffic controllers, radar, visuals, the whole thing, military aircraft trying to intercept these things. We got all of that. There's no question. And it was heavy duty. Like, I actually spoke to the last surviving air traffic controller for a TV pilot that never happened, but his name was Howard Coughlin. He died shortly after I spoke with him. And he actually said to me that he saw he had a visual of one of these objects, and he described it as kind of like a flying saucer, essentially is how he described it. But the The tension in the air traffic control rooms at Washington National Airport was intense. There were people who really believed like this was going to be the moment where we announced to the world that these UFOs were real. That's how intense it was. And of course, what ended up happening is after 2 weekends of this, the U.S. Air Force had a press conference to defuse the whole situation because they could not admit this. This all happened in the middle of the most intense wave of UFO sightings up to that point in history. 1952 was a very, very active year. And the Air Force was collecting UFO reports more than they could handle, hundreds and hundreds every month. In the pre-internet era, there's a lot of this stuff happening. And so it was a very big problem. And the Air Force press conference was just, there's a couple of these things. We don't know what they are, but we're not concerned that they're dangerous. And what we experienced last weekend in DC was a weather phenomenon that screwed up the radar. They called it a temperature inversion. Right. None of the traffic controllers agreed with this, but none of them were allowed to speak.
Richard, what came first, the day the Earth stood still movie or the UFO flap over Washington, D.C.? I think they came out around the same time.
They did. I think the flap was first because I think the day the Earth stood still wasn't that 1953?
Yeah. So within a year. I think you're correct. So within a year, perhaps that triggered that movie. I have a very funny story about Robert Wise. If you read my first book, Flirting with Fame, my Hollywood book, I knew Robert Wise, and that's a whole funny story. We don't have time. Okay.
I just want to add something to that. I think there's a new dimension that's come out about that case with Beatrice's research.
Beatrice Villarroel.
Yeah, I think that's really important because you asked, is this a valid case? Is this a real case? Right. And I think that adds another dimension.
Yeah, let me explain. So Beatrice Villarroel she's an astronomer.
Okay.
She might be an astrophysicist. She's an astronomer, doctorate. Great lady. She's been talking about this. One thing she did is she discovered astronomical plates from the Palomar Observatory from the early 50s, before Sputnik, before any satellites, showing objects in space that are not supposed to be there. That would be there briefly, and then in the next series of plates would be gone. And so the question is, what are these things? They seem anomalous. So one of them dates from July of 1952, the exact time of the Washington overflights of these objects. I don't know if that's a connection, and then another was from 1950. It's a very interesting.
It was the exact
mystery.
Day, was it not?
I think July 25th or 26th.
The exact day.
So,
these are seen in space,
right?
Then and then not.
More proof that no one will admit to.
It's quite interesting.
It's great. All right, race number 7. All right, Richard, tell us about Kingman, because I know nothing. I didn't ever study this one.
Yeah, the answer to that is fact. Kingman UFO crash is fact. It actually happened. So that was May of 1953. So Kingman, Arizona. It's in the Four Corners area out there. Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah. Or am I getting Wyoming? I can't. I don't know.
All right.
So King is in Arizona, in the top north eastern corner there. So, pardon me. In May of 1953, a virtually intact object seems to have come down. Why do we think this? In the 1970s, the excellent UFO researcher Ray Fowler, who's still alive, interviewed a gentleman named Arthur Stansel, who was a highly accomplished scientist, engineer, did a lot of work for the U.S. Defense Department. We have total background of Stansel. He's absolutely legit. And he spoke with Ray Fowler about being taken in by a blacked out bus to a crash retrieval site. Gave a lot of very detailed description of this event. Too much probably to recount here, but that was the beginning. And there have been a number of researchers who've gone into the Kingman event. One recently passed away, who was named Harry Drew, a very dedicated researcher on this. And long story short, they recovered the craft. They brought it to what was not even then called Area 51, but out in the Nevada desert, to just get it out of where it was, because it was too visible, it was too public. And yes, I think this was an intact craft, one of several that the United States military recovered.
I wonder why it's not as well known as Roswell.
Well, it didn't. Roswell had a newspaper headline.
Right.
That was one thing.
Good answer. Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
They didn't have a publicist for Kingman. Roswell had a publicist, literally, right? Walter Hout, that poor bastard, Walter Hout.
There's been a number of other UFO crashes that I think have happened that people don't know as well. We can talk about them sometime. One was in Aztec, New Mexico in 1948. I do believe that was real. And there have been others.
Right. Okay, Tracey.
I'm just going to add that if people are interested in those cases in particular, Michael Schratt has done an incredible job pulling them apart and having artists render what was reported.
That's right.
They're incredible, and they really bring these crashes and the whole stories to life.
Yeah.
So
Michael's got a good YouTube channel.
I saw his lecture last year at Contact. Yeah. I want to talk to him about doing something with me on the sighting I had with my father.
Oh yeah,
that was pretty
great idea.
Good. Michael is just such a superb researcher and a great man. He's a great guy.
Did dinner with him last year. Yeah, he's very sweet.
Very
Okay, Tracey, how does one become a close encounter researcher?
Well, I can speak for myself.
Yes.
So what ended up happening, obviously, by osmosis, I was getting a lot of this, and we were meeting lots of people at conferences. And for me, it's very personal because of things that have happened to me. However, this whole sort of real focus for me happened because I was brought on with a TV production group. We were putting a show together that never ended up happening. And the focus was close encounters and abduction reports that had never been heard of before. So for me, I really went super deep into close encounter case studies. And at Contact in the Desert this year, I'm going to be recounting some of those cases. So for me, it was actually the show that didn't end up going, but it brought me deeper than I've ever been into these accounts. And I feel an absolute need to speak for these people who are basically silenced for one reason or another. You know, it's either family reasons, rejection of family, stigma, worried about children and their careers, or, you know, all the usual reasons. But I feel I need to advocate for these people who have been living with these secrets for sometimes 75 years, you know. So for me, it was just something I went into, deep passion, and I want to share some of that information with people. I think it's important, especially after especially after the Arrow report came out and just like squashed everything. It made me change directions. I wanted to come out and talk about this when that happened. I just felt like this can't be that they're just saying all of this never happened, you know?
Well, that's great. That's great that you're an advocate for so many experiencers. You know, I'm friends with Earl Grey Anderson, the head of MUFON SoCal. I'm friends with Camille Harmon. She was abducted as a teen, impregnated, and then months later they took her fetus. I'm friends with Deborah Cobble, who you know from Bud Hopkins' work. So some of these experiencers write books, or they go on TV, or they're still a little shy. But you know, Earl Grey Anderson talks about his experiences. But Tracey, probably a lot of the people you meet are people we never heard about.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, just to say that was one of the things that, of course, the show wanted, people that we've never heard of before. This is why, because for some reason or another, they can't speak. And, you know, some of them I knew weren't even going to go on the show, but I felt like they needed to be listened to. You know, this had affected their life in the most dramatic way. And they probably will never say anything publicly, but I can speak about them, you know, either anonymously or if they decide to give their names. But a lot of them, it's nice that they have written their stories in books, but some of them, that's just not going to happen. You know, it's just not practical for them. And I think that all of these cases need to be, if we can, need to be added to the data, you know, so we can look for other patterns and inform ourselves more deeply about what's going on.
I mean, even Betty and Barney Hill didn't come out on day one.
No, it took years.
Yeah.
I just want to say I was able to glean some of the cases that Tracey was looking into,
Right.
some of these people, and their stories are really quite remarkable. I'll just leave it at that.
And some of them are too traumatized. You know, they're actually, the trauma is too great to be able to tell the story publicly in some way. And the trauma that they're experiencing is like any other trauma. You know, it's a different type of memory, and you can tell this. So some people are able to work through that trauma and come and, you know, and tell their stories. And some people, it's not going to happen. You know, they could only share it with one person. And I think they're important to hear from as well.
So you're a sounding board for them and a venue by which they can share. But do you give them, I mean, I don't think you're a psychiatrist. Do you give them advice or counsel or suggestions?
Well, only as another, I mean, I don't want people to think I go outside of my area of expertise.
Right.
But having been around this field for a long time and having had experiences, it's sort of, I can give them, you know, my best advice as one person to another, not in any formal capacity, but, you know, compassionate advice that any of us would give to each other.
I can say Tracey has definitely helped a lot of these people come to terms with what they've gone through, because I've seen it. And she's a very compassionate and good listener.
Yeah, you just say that because you're in love.
Well, I'm a little biased. I'll give you that.
a little biased, a little tweak there. What do you guys think of the TV show, my new favorite show, Resident Alien? Have you been watching Resident Alien?
We watched season one.
We saw season one.
Love it.
It's
Right,
so off
was,
the wall.
It's funny. It was very funny.
It was cute. I'll leave it there. It was okay.
Well, it's not fresh. I mean, we were watching it a little while ago, right?
I'm much harder on these shows than many people, I will say.
Well, the reason I brought it up, you guys, is season 3. One of the lead characters, the mayor's wife, is shown, and it's haunting. I mean, that's a comedy show, but there are moments that are haunting and touching and a little scary. She had been pregnant, and then she just lost the baby. She tells her husband, "You know, I'm so sorry, I lost the baby." Oh man, and they were very sad. But in season 3, you see her with a baby in a nursery, and she's singing, and she's madly in love with her child, right? And then gray aliens come into the scene, and they literally yank the baby, and she goes, "No, 10 more minutes. Please, 10 more minutes." And then they beam her back into her bedroom in her real life. And it's very touching.
This is season 3 of Resident Alien?
Yeah, so Richard, hang in with that show, man, because you got hang into it, because in season 3 it gets
we need to go. Okay.
Yes. Don't give up on season 1. Yeah, give it a little bit more of a chance. Do you guys know who Ella LeBain is by any chance?
Sounds familiar.
I don't think so.
Ella LeBain, she's a friend of mine. She's a biblical scholar. She's written a book series, you may have heard of it, a 6-book series, Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo.
No, sounds
each book is like the Manhattan phone book. Okay. And she analyzes God and angels and ETs and UFOs in the Bible, in the Old and New Testament. It's very interesting if you want that. Anyway, I interviewed her recently.
Interesting.
And she said, Dan, the scene in Resident Alien, she said it happened to her in real life. Okay. She had been impregnated I think in her early 20s, and then they took the baby, and then they later showed her and that's intense, man.
I see. Now you're forcing me to watch season 2, and I got to go into season 3 now. So thank you.
You'll power through it, and I'm waiting for season 4. I'm going to try to get those guys on my show. Anyway, you guys, thank you. This was so much fun. We did about a third, maybe a third of my questions, but I would love to do part 2 with you. Of course, I'll see you at Contact in the Desert. I can't wait to see you. Tracey, I'll give you a big hug when we won't tell Richard. And, let's stay in touch and be well. And thank you for all that you've done for this community. I mean, you guys are the greatest. Thank you very much for doing my show as well.
Thank you, Dan. It was a pleasure. It was really fun hanging out with you.
Dan, thank you to you and Sean and your amazing daughter, Anjali, as well. So
that's very
everything
sweet.
we've all done.
HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org. There is a donate button. We are a 501c3. Please donate. Do you guys want to plug any websites, social?
Well, I mean, go check out our site at richardolanmembers.com. I have it's a member site, but there's a lot of free stuff there. I work there, put up material all the time. We have an active YouTube channel, Richard Dolan Intelligent Disclosure. And if you're inclined to travel, go to Contact in the Desert at the end of May, and we will be there. We'll be happy to see you.
Right. Contactinthedesert.com. Buy your tickets now. Thank you, Richard and Tracey Dolan. You guys are my friends, and I really appreciate that you did this for me. That's it for this week. Live from Hollywood, it's Paranormal Tonight. I am Dan Harary. Next week is our mutual friend, Paul Hynek. His father, you may have heard of his father, Dr. Alan, some Alan Hynek, something Close Encounter, Spielberg, something. So Paul Hynek next week. Thanks everybody for watching, and keep your eyes out, looking up at the sky. And if you're into UFOs, go to contactinthedesert.com. Take care. Thank you very much.